Hiya my lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Amy and I'm a cruelty-free makeup enthusiast. I'm so excited about today's video because it is all about the Melt Cosmetics Rust palette. Now, I guess I'm a little behind on doing this because Melt has already announced their new collection, which is their 420 collection, which again makes me giggle. I guess it's an expansion on their Smoke Sessions palette. They're doing a whole new palette and like a whole new collection. So I did really want to talk about Rust though. I actually broke my no-buy for this palette. I was on a no-buy for this year. I saw this thing and I was like, you know what? I don't even want to wait for someone to give this to me. I've been really good with my money lately, so I really wanted to pick this up, and I'm happy that I did. It is a beautiful palette. I have a lot of thoughts about it in regards to the palette. If there are similar shades to other Melt palettes that I have in my collection, I did a 3 looks 1 palette with this as well, so we'll get into the looks shortly. First, let's talk about the shades that are in this palette. So I'm going to insert some swatches and then provide you some shade descriptions. From left to right, we have Classic, which is an ultra matte soft vanilla tone. The next we have Antique, which is a beautiful ultra matte peach shadow. Erode, which is an intense apricot matte. Ravage, which is an ultra matte Dijon mustard color. Tarnish, which is a vintage warm gold. Rust, which is a deep terracotta matte with a rich red undertone. Redux, which is a burnt copper. Mar, which is a rich and sultry mahogany. Ravage, which is a deep bronze. And then Rot to the second degree, which is a deep chocolate brown. Now, this palette was actually inspired by the original Rust stack that Melt had. Some of these colors that are included in this palette were in the original stack. So these are all inspired by like earthy, rusty, worn out, antique looking things. This palette comes in the typical Melt 10-pan palette. It's in a slimmer and long-sized component. It does retail for $58 USD. It's also vegan, and of course it's cruelty-free. I want to quickly touch upon the similarities with some of my other palettes in my collection. Now, this one actually does have some similarities to the Gemini palette and the 27 palette. So I'm going to show you some swatches on my arm and tell you which ones are kind of similar. Alright, so let me get my arm in here. So here are all the similarities that I was able to find within the different palettes that I have in my collection. So right here we have Moonchild. This is from the 27 palette, and it's actually quite similar to the Mar shade in the Rust palette. So this is 27, and this is the Rust palette. And then we have Rubbish right here. This is from the Rust palette, and then this is Lorelei. This is from the Gemini palette. These are very, very similar in that kind of mustardy type shade that they are. All right, so now on to these 3 right here, which I think are actually quite similar. So on the left-hand side, we have Cupcake from Gemini, and then in the middle here, we have Whiskey Neat from the 27 palette. On the right-hand side, we have Mar from Rust. So these are actually quite similar. They have slight different undertones, but I think they are very, very comparable to one another. And then lastly, we have on the left side, this is Rot to the second degree. This is from the Rust palette. And then on the right-hand side is Bonnie from Gemini. They are different. Bonnie is like a pure black. Rot to the second degree is much more of a deep chocolatey brown, but if you want like a deep rich color, they are kind of similar. So those are the ones that I definitely see similarities for between all my palettes. So in addition to this palette, I also got another item from this collection. This is the Ultra Matte Gel Liner in Burnish. This is a beautiful deep red brown. It's a gorgeous color, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised at how easy it was to use this. I just used a liner brush and it just went right on. It glided right onto the skin. I didn't have any problems using it. These retail for $19, and I actually think they are worth the price. Now back to this palette. So I want to start off my review and just saying that I absolutely love Melt Cosmetics. Although they are very pricey, they're just a really good brand. I feel like color story wise, they put out some of the most interesting color stories. I love the way that they lay out their palettes where you can see certain color stories kind of together, how to use the colors together. My absolute favorite palette from them is actually their Muerte palette, which was part of their whole Day of the Dead collection, and it was just, they're just brilliant with their aesthetics. Like when they come up with a collection, like they come out with a collection. It's well thought out, the colors are perfectly curated, and honestly, I'm a sucker for kind of like earthy or grungy and like neutral to warm tones, and so that's why I really wanted to pick up this palette. It does kind of remind me packaging wise of the Gemini, just a tiny bit. Now Melt is also known for not having the easiest formula to work with. You know, I've really struggled in the past with my Gemini palette despite loving the color story so much. I'm pretty good with the 27 palette. I have to say again, Morte is actually very easy to work with despite it being like this really deep and rich palette. Now the Rust palette, I have to say, was pretty simple to work with. I didn't have too many issues. The lighter shades here were actually really easy to work with. I had no problems with them. Once we started getting to the deeper shades, I had a little bit more of a hard time kind of blending the color out, but these colors are very pigmented, which is what Melt is known for. Like you don't have to go in with filters to brighten up shades. Like you can get instant saturated color upon initial application. So with these, especially with these darker shades here, this shimmer shade Ravage and then Rot to the Second Degree, which is like the really deep chocolatey brown here, they kind of blend into one another if you put them together. I do think they look nicely together, but they kind of blend in with one another when you use them. And I find that the shimmer in this one for Ravage does kind of, it doesn't give like a real like shimmery effect like the other two metallics do in the palette. Do little swatches for you here on my arm. So there you go, right there. And then I have to say, the other two shimmers, Tarnish and Redox, I think it's Redox. I don't know if it's no, it's Redox. So this one here and this one here. I have Tarnish right here on my lid and my cut crease. These are fantastic shades. So Tarnish is a little, like, it's very smooth. Redox is like, you have to be careful because there's a lot more movability, or there's a lot of movement with the pigment. So I'll show you. So this is Tarnish, right? And then this is Redox. Now Redox is kind of chunky. That's kind of what I'm trying to say here. So you have to be really careful because when you put your finger in the pan or even a brush, the pigment starts to move around. So you have to be a little bit careful. You may experience fallout with that shade. So just something to be aware of. Despite some of the similarities with my other Melt palettes, I'm actually very happy with how this palette turned out. I'm happy with the shades and the looks that I was able to achieve with these. So far, I think that they're pretty much back to consistency. I did not pick up the Millennial Pink palette, but I know there were a lot of mixed reviews on it. I know there were a lot of mixed reviews with the Radioactive palette. I do not own those palettes. So I am kind of concerned with the frequency that Melt Cosmetics is actually putting out product. Usually when indie brands start kind of pushing out more and more product, sometimes that's like kind of a symbol that they might be in the market to be purchased. I don't know. I kind of noticed about that with other brands. I could be completely off with that, but I know that they're now in Sephora, which is wonderful. I'm so happy for them. So all in all, I say that this palette is really good. If you don't have all the Melt palettes like the Gemini, like the 27, I think this is a really good option for you. This is much more of like leaning towards the neutral side, where Gemini was very grungy and then 27 was very reddish. So I think this is a nice balance in between the two. I'm definitely going to be using this a lot more. I've beat this thing to death already. I've been enjoying playing with it so much. And I mean, look at it. Look how the shades are kind of beat up already. Let's see. Let's focus there. There we go. So I've been beating it up. I totally think it was worth breaking my no by 4. Listen, we are in really difficult times right now, and I was in a place where I'm like, you know what? I need some cheering up, I need some inspiration, something to play with, so I'm actually very happy that I did get this. I know right now, Melt, I think they're halting online orders for a little bit, just because with everything going on, but they should be picking up soon. I would say that this is Melt's most user-friendly palette, especially if you're more of a beginner, or if you like to do more simple makeup. I think this is a great option for you. Now let's get into the 3 looks that I created using this palette. Alrighty, lovelies, that is it for me today. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and that is all for me. So until next time, remember to stay compassionate and chic. Bye, guys. Bye.